Our records then were Lloyd George records. Now, Lloyd George was the Premier or Prime Minister in 1911. And he set up these records, which must now be antiques because you've still got them around and you'll all have your own records within them. They're stored away now, but at that time we had to write on those and we had usually one line for one attendance. It would be something like sore throat, penicillin, that's it. We had to summarize all these and we moved them onto A4 paper for a short while. But then on the next slide, you'll see that we had a computer system in place. Initially very basic, but now it's really good with mouse and all the other gizmos that you need. So we can really check all the medical problems very quickly, and we have much more extensive records. They have to be much more extensive to hand on the information because things are much more complex nowadays, and because of medical legal reasons, we have more complaints and more medical legal issues. So that was the Lloyd George records, and on the next slide, you'll see the handwriting examples from that era. Now, one of the amazing things is computers have just moved everything forward. From my point of view, they've been as important as the discovery of a new treatment. But I don't have to have my handwriting read anymore, so that's great. I was writing hundreds of prescriptions, and there's no wonder that my handwriting got a bit mucky at the time. Initially, all the prescriptions were handwritten, thousands, and our receptionist would handwrite them for us and we'd sign them. But now, of course, it's all electronic. And on the right side there, you'll see the different consultation styles that emerged over the years. So when I started out in practice, we consulted across a table. There was no computer, but we did have a rapport and relationship. Now we consult at the side so that the table doesn't get in the way of our consultation. And we try and keep eye contact and build a good rapport, and we're trained in that area. We've got a computer on the table. And obviously one of the problems is you can look at the computer and not at the person. So you need to be careful about what you're doing and try and keep that contact in place. And we're wearing masks now, so that limits our communication. And of course, at the start of COVID, we were also working on the phone, so it's even more difficult. So the important thing for us was the continuity. We knew our patients well enough to be able to talk over the phone and maintain some sort of relationship. Next slide. Well, we come to the patient participation group. And this patient participation group was first established around about 1995. There was Dr. Sally Bacon and Dr. Kathy Fowler, who's just retired, and some of you may know, who set up that with my input as well. And over the years, the patient participation group has been involved in lots of different ways with the practice. On the next slide, you'll see the health walks. Now, the health walks was an idea that emerged in 1999 when I sat down with the PPG, and in particular with Peter Fortescue. On the back of an envelope, we sketched out a few walks in the local area to help people after surgery or to rehabilitate from illness or just to get fitter. And they were half mile up to 6 mile. And on the next slide, you'll see that we had a sketch of the local area. And this is an example of one of the cards that we used to have. And we handed them out to patients and they walked around the area. That's expanded now, and partly thanks on a national basis to a colleague in my year at medical school. 2015 was when we spoke at the anniversary dinner at Christmas for the Health Walks process. There was several hundred people there. And at that time, they were doing 10 walks a week, 250 people a week, 400,000 miles over 15 years. That's pretty impressive. And I'm sure you've all seen people walking around in groups. You're probably members of the Health Walks yourselves. And if you're not, do join in. Great. On the next slide, you will hear a bit more about what's been happening with the patient participation group. You have an active committee, and thank you. You have a virtual group. We've sort of heard of several thousand people that can be emailed. You produce regular surveys each year, and that had originally led to a change in the phone system. And now, 3 weeks ago, we had a new phone system again in response to feedback we've had from the PPG. You put in place the screens. Lillian Hobbs in particular helped put those screens at each surgery, which tell you about what's going on. We've had representation regionally for things like diabetes, and Dennis Pearce was involved with that. And as a PPG, you've been a regional lead. Jan Blan and the team have all represented the PPG at national regional meetings and encouraged other PPGs and supported them. You've got your newsletter, you've got the information stands, which have stopped just for COVID, but hopefully will restart. And you've been involved with research. And we've had representation at the University of Winchester with Mike Wilson, and we've had links in with Southampton and Professor Holgate through Frank Anderson. Next page, next slide. I'm bringing you forward to 2002 now. St. Francis Surgery gets built. It's Simon Chaplin-Rogers, Dr. Simon Chaplin-Rogers at the front there, bowed down as he's walking in, who actually was very closely involved with the design. If it hadn't been for him, I don't think we'd have had a surgery at all. They didn't have any plans for it. And you can also recognize Pauline Denyer and Jenny Chalk there, amongst others, who you may know from reception work. It was a round tower design, so we got some cheese-shaped rooms there. And you'll see a red arrow there, which is just above the veterinary surgery. Now, the veterinary surgery used to be the branch surgery. And when I started in general practice, I used to sleep in that branch surgery at night. I was sleeping on the camp bed at the time. I was doing 1 in 5 nights. And because I was commuting from Portsmouth to Chandler's Ford, I needed somewhere to stay. And it seemed a logical thing to do. The youth used to come round and bang on the windows and try and wake me up. It was fun. But it was a lot better than when I started out. We had Dr. Ritchie doing every night. When I started out, I did every second night. I would work through the day, do the night, work the next day. On the weekends, I would start on Friday at about 8 o'clock. I would work through all the nights until I finished on Monday around about 6 or 7 o'clock. That was every second weekend when I started in medical work. And as I moved through, obviously things got easier. And now we don't do any night calls because we have an out-of-hours service. So that's been a big step forward. That red arrow also shows you that in the veterinary surgery, we did, when it changed across to veterinary surgery, we had several patients who actually went along and sat and waited for their doctor in the veterinary surgery. They looked around, saw the dog food, but it took them a little while. Next slide. The opportunity here was we've got 2 surgeries and there's a path in between. And it's quicker to rollerblade than to drive. So I used to rollerblade from one surgery to the other. We'd have a meeting at 8 o'clock on Friday morning, finished about 9:30, I'd rollerblade across to Park Surgery, and then at the end of the surgery, I'd rollerblade back for duty or the minor operations on Friday afternoon. And the next picture will show you that I did wear protection. So if you saw me, I'd have been wearing helmet, backpack, elbow pads, knee pads. And this was in London at the rollerblade marathon at the time. The next slide will show you that we also had dogs in the surgery. Not in the surgery, but it's a theme with our surgery. And 4 of the doctors in the surgery have schnauzers. Dr. Chaplin-Rogers, Dr. Sam Glanville, Dr. Jane O'Connor, and myself. And pets do make a difference. They help with mental health, they help with physical activity. And if you want to get more involved in that, Pets as Therapy is one of the websites you can go to. On the next slide, you will see that we got involved with teaching. I was interested in teaching, and we started to accredit ourselves as a teaching practice back in 1994. Since then, we've had a registrar working with us, at least 1 or 2 a year. And registrars are very experienced in the hospital setting. They're just learning about how to work in general practice. And in general practice, we see a lot of people with less severe illness, and we have to pick out the serious illness. And we do it by taking the history as much as anything else. In the hospital, they see people who already have serious illness, and they do lots of tests. And they have to adjust to that. And that's one of the skills that they develop. And you'll see Dr. Emmanuel Umaru here and Dr. Lamia Elnahas on the right. And now we have a group of some 15 to 30, I suppose, almost, registrars and doctors who've had experience of our practice. And we have a sort of family of GPs who work locally, who worked in the country, and some have gone abroad and come back again. So it's really nice having that support. And of course, it gives us extra service. There's more time for those people to actually listen. They have longer appointments. And so it's really helpful for us. On the next slide, you will see that as a PPG and as patients, you also help raise money for charity. I was very keen that we raise money, and I'm sure you are, for cancer care research. And so we've, as a group, and you'll see in the next picture, the 40 or so cyclists from the local area did a regular route down to Europe. They might go to Rome. I met or waved at the Pope there and met the Pope's emissary in Rome, or Monaco, or Gibraltar, or Barcelona, about 1,500 miles, and they cycled for 100 miles a day. And they raised about £50,000 each cycle ride, and roughly £400,000 so far overall for cancer care research. And that was thanks to yourselves, because many of you would have donated to that. That was really great. Next one. And of course, cycling keeps you fit and healthy.